Joining us now on Texans Radio, it's Texans General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, great to see you. Thanks for being on with us. Let's start here. I know we're going to talk about everything involved with the game and what's to come against Dallas, but with the rookies, with the younger players, it feels like from the outside looking in that some of these guys were hitting that rookie wall maybe, but they've blasted through it and they're on the other side. You see a lot of production from some of the younger players, especially in the game against Cleveland.
Season's really, and we've talked about this, there's a lot of ebb and flow to the season. So if you kind of break it up a little bit into quarters or halves, if you will. So I would say, generally speaking, you're going to have hopefully a decent start during the middle of the year. There might be some things that you have to deal with on a lot of different levels. And then hopefully, as you get the duration of the season, you can continue to see some improvement. So I'd say we're certainly seeing some examples of that. There's been some dips in play, whether it's been individually or collectively. And then there's been, I'd say, some bright spots or some guys have taken advantage of the opportunities here as we move forward here towards the latter part of the season. So it's credit to the players just for their attitude and their effort and their willingness to continue to improve. Credit to the staff to continue to work with those players. So, we just have to hopefully do it more collectively as a team and not so much on an individual case by case, but it's certainly encouraging to see, some of those signs.
Nick, when I was looking at the flip card from the game, and I looked over, and on the flip card, the rookies are highlighted and underlined. And you looked at our side, you looked at the Brown side, and you look at two teams that are built differently. They got a lot of veterans. We've got a lot of young players. And I thought it made me think about this. The evaluation stage for you, how much different and how difficult is it for you? Because when I think back to your time in New England, did you ever have a team or teams that were this young that you're kind of looking at? Because it felt like in New England you had a lot of veterans, but then you'd mix in some rookies, but maybe not the volume of rookies or young players, even first, second-year players. It's been kind of tough to think about, go back and look at a situation that you had in New England and kind of compare it to and kind of look at it that way?
No, it's interesting. I think every situation is a little bit different. Your composition of your team is going to change year to year. So how those players get onto your team, what the mixture is going to change year to year. We're in a situation where we drafted a number of young players over the last few years, so that's kind of the way they're constructed. So it's a combination of young, youthful players, younger players, and we have a number of veteran players as well. So when you look across the league, when you start to just look at team building and team constructions, it's inevitably going to be a mixture of the two. You have, call it rookies or 0 to 3 year, then you kind of have that mid-career sort of veteran, and then you have some players that have a lot more experience, 8, 9, 10 years, who have been on, a number of different teams or have had a lot of success elsewhere. So it's kind of a melting pot of all three. We're probably a little more skewed towards the younger players, some of our younger players or some of our better players. And it's not that you're just going to put younger players out there just to evaluate them. You want to put your best players on the field. Let's say some of our younger players or some of our better players, and the only way that they're going to learn and improve is by playing. So there's going to be some things you're going to have to live with. But ultimately, you want to see execution, you want to see improvement, you want to see progress, and ultimately, that's the most important thing.
Well, you're seeing a defense where Pitre made a play on Sunday, and we know about Kurt Hinish, Jake Hansen seeing some action as well, young guys, Roy Lopez, year 2, making plays. The defensive side of the ball played a good game on Sunday, Nick. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we did. I mean, anytime you don't give up a touchdown, that's good defense. And then to score on defense with the safety, is a combination of good play in a kicking game. So we got a good punt, so good situationally, and then we're able to get a stop kind of in that backed up situation. Say we handled that situation defensively fairly well. We were able to get 2 points. Offensively, probably didn't handle as well as we would have hoped. But overall, defensively, you're certainly seeing some things that are better. We've played, and we've talked about this, in a red area for the most part. We've done a pretty good job from the beginning of the year until now, which I would say, our red area defense is going to be taxed this week against Dallas, who is as efficient and proficient a red area offense as there is in the league. So played good in the red area. This past week, and then in conjunction with the rest of the year. The run game, I'd say there were some pockets there. They were able to churn out some yards and more volume more than anything else. So, and I'd say the tackling, we've missed some tackles, but that's improved. So you're seeing some things. But anytime you don't give up points on defense, that's usually a good thing. So it's just disappointing when we give them points offensively in the kicking game. But again, we emphasize the importance of all three phases. And there was a really good example in real time on Sunday.
Nick, the importance of fit, and I'm talking about Jalen Pitre, because I thought it was interesting when we were in with Lovey 2 Mondays ago. He talked about Jalen moving back to free safety. And that seems to really have been paying off for the defense. Him being back there, he made the play, obviously, on the interception from a free safety spot. From your perspective, when you're analyzing and you're looking at players and you're thinking about what's the potential fit, how does kind of all that come together for you guys? You kind of think about, well, we think he could be this, but then you got to try and figure it out once that guy gets here. How tough does that become?
John, that happens a lot where you maybe say, all right, you've seen a player do this. You're not really sure how he's going to handle maybe a different situation. And you're not going to really know until you know, until you kind of put him in that position. But the safety position, if you look at it, there's going to be times where when you have two safeties on a field, sometimes you have three safeties if you're in a big nickel. Dallas plays a lot of that. But there's going to be split safety coverages where they're going to both have to be in the deep part of the field. And then when you play post safety coverages, how you want to deploy. One's going to be down, one's going to be back, and how you want to spin that. So Jalen's a very instinctive player. He's an instinctive player at Baylor, so he's instinctive. He sees the field fairly well. He's had his hands on more balls over the last few weeks. He was able to complete the catch there in the end zone, which is a really instinctive play when you actually watch the play, because it was really a double post kind of concept, or topper, or whatever you want to call it. And the inside player ran across on a crossing route, and quarterback is kind of looking to see what the reaction of the free safety is going to be. So I think his initial movement was to follow the cross, and then he kept his eyes on a quarterback, and then he worked back into the throwing window because there was a post coming behind it. So it was a really instinctive play, which playing safety is it's a very instinctive position. Like, you have to see a lot of things, you have to understand a lot of things, you're reacting, and then reading a quarterback is a big part of it as well. So I mean, something as simple as just following a quarterback's eyes, reading a quarterback, and reading your keys, like those are important to defensive football players. You can talk about how fast they are, how high they jump, and all the rest of that, but ultimately, each position, there's certain requirements. Playing safety, you're just seeing a lot of things, a lot of space, which is why not all corners can necessarily transfer from corner to safety, but you've seen that. So it speaks to their instinctiveness, their ability to kind of handle space, their ability to handle some different adjustments. Went through that experience with Devin McCourty. You've seen it in Buffalo with Poyer and Hyde, who were both college corners that kind of have transitioned to playing a deep part of the field. And Jalen really played, for lack of a better term, nickel at Baylor for the most part, because he was down there at the line of scrimmage. So now he's kind of playing a little bit differently. So it's a good point that you make, John. You don't really know. Sometimes it goes the way you think it's going to go, and other times you say, you know what? Maybe this guy handles more than we think, or, he's not as comfortable, so we try to do something else with him.
Christian Kirksey, I want to ask you about him, Nick. Veteran, captain. He's the Texans nominee for Walter Payton Man of the Year. How special is that, and can you discuss him a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say Kirko kind of embodies everything that you want in a football player, both professionally on the field and on a personal level. I know his involvement during the spring with the Uvalde community, and him and KG, they went down there, spent the day down there on behalf of the organization. But Kirko is a respected player, I would say, that we have in the building. And wherever he's been, whether it's Cleveland or Green Bay, he's been the more well-respected players on the team. So a certain level of toughness, and his leadership, I would say, is as good as any that we had. He does it both verbally, he does it with his actions, and people follow him. But to be recognized for, I would say, something non-football related, it kind of speaks to who Christian is as a person, individual. And, we're fortunate to have him. He made a conscious decision to be here when we first signed him, a few years back, and then we re-signed him in the offseason. And quite frankly, he probably had other opportunities that could have gone somewhere else. And maybe it hasn't gone the way all of us or he would have hoped as well from a win-loss perspective, but that hasn't necessarily changed his mindset, his attitude week to week, what he brings to the table. So he's very well deserving. As deserving as probably anybody in the league. It's a very prestigious honor. So for him to be recognized speaks to him on a lot of different levels.
Nick, this week, Dallas Cowboys. Sunday night, I know we saw a fourth quarter that included a lot of mistakes by the Colts, but 33 points by the Cowboys. Pretty explosive bunch. Let's dive into the scouting report of Dallas Cowboys. What do you see?
Yeah, they're a really good football team, I'd say, on all three levels. Offensively, defensively, and the kicking game. I think Mike's done a really good job. Mike's has accomplished a head coach as there is in the league anytime you win a Super Bowl in a good organization. So I think Mike's done a good job. And I'd say they have a very experienced coaching staff when you look at the composition. Both offensively, defensively, and then the kicking game with Bones, who's as good of a special teams coordinator as in the league. Defensively, I think Dan has kind of modified some of the things that he's done over the course of his career. This isn't just the old Seattle 3, but it's Dan's experience. Dan kind of worked under Pete, but I'd say Dan's evolved when you look at how they're playing defensively. They have George Edwards, who kind of has a background with Coach Zimmer, and Joe Witt, who has kind of a background with with Mike in Green Bay. But I would say the thing that stands out about them is just their overall athleticism, their speed, and their length. I mean, they have speed and length essentially at all three levels of the defense. Parsons, I mean, there's really not much that you can say about him other than he does literally everything well. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to find holes in this player, in his game. He's as unique a player, honestly, as there is in the league. When you look at what he done, he played off the ball at Penn State, and then he's basically transitioned to playing defensive end. And he basically presents a problem wherever he is lined up. But, I mean, he does everything well. He's fast. He's explosive. I mean, he's a problem, and you're going to have to account for it. But their front, I would say, presents a lot of issues as well. I think they lead the league in sacks. They pressure the quarterback mostly from a four-down front. So between Lawrence, between Parsons, they have a number of players that they roll through. Dante Fowler's given them some snaps. They're really a nickel defense. So they've we talked about this at different points. So there's 65, 70% nickel defense. So whether it's big nickel with Kirksey and the nickel spot, or Bland, the rookie who's kind of replaced Jordan Lewis. And then Van Der Esch is on the field for all groups, so he's really having a good year. So good front, good at the second level. In the secondary, Diggs' production on the ball is as good as any play. Anytime you touch 32, get your hands on 32 balls. I know it was last year, but former receiver, really good ball skills. I know Brown got hurt last night, or the other night, so they're going to have to transition somebody else there. And they play multiple safeties. They're kind of a three-safety team. So, I mean, defensively, they present a lot of problems, I'd say, with their speed, their athleticism, their effort, and then Dan's done a good job of sort of modifying some of the things that they do. Offensively, they've been pretty consistent from the beginning of the year, even though when Cooper had to play. I mean, they kind of held the fort there with Coop, and Coop did a good job, and then Dak's come back, and I'd say since he's come back, they've been as good of an offense as there's in the league. I mean, they're averaging 35 points a game, over 400 yards of offense. So Dak is playing well. Good offensive line. It's a bunch of new faces, though. It's not kind of a lot of the players that have been there other than Zach. Zach has been there, Martin. But they drafted Tyler Smith, from Tulsa in the first round. And he's actually had to kind of play right away at tackle because of what happened to Tyron. So they've done a good job on the offensive line. Coach Philbin does a good job with that group. And then two really good backs. I mean, they're really pick a winner. They kind of complement each other. They're both a problem when they're on the field. And they're 12 and kind of 11 personnel, but they play 3 and 4 tight ends at different points. So between Schultz, between Ferguson, the rookie out of Wisconsin, McKeon. So they CeeDee Lamb is as good a receiver there is in the league, and they use him a variety of different spots. I think he's targeted as a top 5 in terms of targets in the league. So, I mean, they're a good team. And then the kicking game, Anger's done a pretty good job for them. Brent Maher's done a good job. And then Turpin is really giving them some plays of return kind of out of nowhere. So, very athletic, very explosive team. I mean, that game was 21-13 or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, they got out of hand with a handful of plays. So, just want to try to keep it, in the same zip code there for a little bit. But they have a lot of really good players, and they've done a good job, I would say, of drafting and developing a number of good players.
Nick, is Dak Prescott another good example of you never know where good quarterbacks are going to come from? And we're going to see him now. We saw Taylor Heineke a couple of weeks ago, and Russell Wilson against Denver. I know he was originally drafted in the 3rd round, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good point, Mark. So Dak, when he came out, they played a certain way offensively, and I think there were some questions about how good he did certain things. But the one thing about him, he's tough as hell, and he's athletic, and he's very strong, and he's gotten better, and he's improved in a number of different ways. They do a good job offensively. Kellen does a good job. They're very balanced. They get the ball out quick. They don't hold the ball. Dak makes good decisions, and he's accurate with the ball. So he's improved as a player from the time that he's been in the league to where he is now, and he continues to get better. But I think it's a good example of you never know where the players are going to come from. You can think, well, we have to draft them here, and that's going to end up in whatever the end result. It doesn't always go that way. I think it's a credit to the players, it's a credit to the staff, it's a credit to the infrastructure and the overall program for the development of the player.
Nick, I'm totally fascinated by Parsons' evolution because I don't remember at Penn State seeing him rush the edge at all. And then all of a sudden in Dallas, you look up and he's rushing the edge and you're like, wait, what's going on? And he's really good. Wait, he's not only really good, he could be one of the best in the league at this. Oh my gosh, he might be the best in the league. And he didn't even do that at Penn State. And it kind of goes back to my question about, you get a guy here, and then you have an idea of what you think he can do, and then he shows you, no, I can do a whole heck of a lot more. I'm totally fascinated by that evolution, what he can do going from one position that he didn't even play to now being a superstar, complete, total game wrecker from a different position.
Yeah, I'll even go one step further. He opted out of his last year. So he didn't play for a year. So the last time you actually saw him play football would have been 19 because he opted out in 20. And then when they drafted him, you saw them use him a little bit in the preseason. I was watching a Hall of Fame game when he was a rookie, and they were using him a little bit defensive end, and it was probably more, well, it's an opportunity to maybe see if he can rush. The thing that makes him so unique is his balance, his lower body flexibility, and his explosiveness, and he's very strong for his size. So there are games now. I'd say he's transitioned this year to more full-time defensive end. There are certain games where we play him off the ball. They played him off the ball a little bit more against Green Bay because of probably how they were playing versus Aaron, Rodgers and Jones. But he's so unique. He's like Von Miller as an edge rusher with the ability to play off the ball linebacker. So when you put that together, like there are not too many people that fit that profile. So, but they've done a really good job. Dan's done a good job of maybe having a vision of what they wanted to do with him and how they played. And it kind of accentuates the player's strengths. So, they have Van Der Esch off the ball. They have Barr to, some other guys in there if, they're not going to use Parsons. But, Parsons is a problem like wherever he is, and he can play on both sides. So, which speaks to he's obviously a very smart guy. He's very instinctive, and he has a unique skill set, quite frankly, that, it's hard to duplicate.
We know you want to move the ball better, and against Cleveland, able to move it on the ground. A couple of games where that just wasn't happening. Now Pierce comes around, didn't erupt or anything, but got the yardage going on the ground. Is that going to help the passing game moving forward here, Nick?
Yeah, you always want to try to stay as balanced as you can. So we were able to turn out some yards there in the running game, had some positive runs. We were able to break a few runs there for, 8, 10, 12 yards, whatever it was. So the more we can run the ball, it just kind of creates more balance. So in the end, you want to be balanced. You don't want to be skewed one way or the other. We ended up kind of 39, 40 to 20 or whatever it was. So try to maintain some modicum of balance. And however we have to move the ball, I think this defense presents, a number of problems. So we're just going to figure out what's the most efficient way to do it. So the offensive line did a good job. DP did a pretty good job running. So, see if we can certainly build on that here going against the Cowboys this week.
Nick, I want to ask you about Nico Collins and kind of his evolution as a player through 2 years. What have you seen from him, and where do you think his ceiling could end up being going forward?
Yeah, Nico works hard. He's improved, I would say, his overall strength and his athleticism, his movement. His big target has strong hands. I think the biggest thing is to continue to just each week be consistent, take advantage of the opportunities. We kind of misconnected with him, a few times where we weren't able to get on the same page. So he's targeted 10 times, only had 3 catches. So just want to see, a better ratio on that, but he has good attributes relative to playing the position, and he's certainly shown the propensity to be able to make some plays, whether it's down the field, contested, or, some of the inside breaking routes. He's a big, strong guy, kind of uses his body well, so just kind of continue to take advantage of his opportunities, but Nico's a good kid. He works hard. He's got a good attitude, and he's improved, I would say, physically in some of his, his lower body strength and some of that, so you want to continue to improve those areas and then kind of see on-field improvement, as well.
Nick, one more for you here. Outside of NRG Stadium or your couple decades in New England, outside of Gillette Stadium, what stadium to you is kind of cool to go to? Because AT&T, Arlington, it's a unique experience no matter how you slice it. We were at SoFi this year. We were in Vegas. What stands out to you?
Yeah, I think just the overall size and the vastness of when you walk in. Big scoreboard. It just seems like it's a very big stadium, which it is. It accommodates up to, 100,000 or whatever it is. So I would say it's kind of has its own unique environment. I'd say the other environment that hadn't been in a regular season, but, when we played there, and I want to say it was 14, was Lambeau Field. Like when you walk into Lambeau Field in November, packed house, there's just something about it. So there's a lot of really cool, unique stadiums throughout the league. Certainly AT&T is in that category. It's different, but when you contrast that with a place like Lambeau, they kind of have their own flavor to them. So, but yeah, the scoreboard's massive, so we have to make sure we keep the ball off the scoreboard when we're kicking.
Nick, thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.